Today, I want to go over, before I start my presentation, I want to go over kind of what our goals are today. I'm going to be talking about how to do a solid presentation. I have some PowerPoints that I'm going to move through very, very quickly just to demonstrate what they should or shouldn't. We're going to start with what they probably shouldn't look like and what's wrong with a couple different slides. And then from there, we're going to talk about 8 things to think about when creating your presentations. And I can even talk to you on how to do some of that. And it's a pretty long presentation, so I'm going to try to go over it quickly. And then the big one is we're going to talk about, and what I want to spend the majority of the time talking about, is the actual lesson itself. That we have a lot of students who struggle creating and earning solid scores on their presentations because they're not quite sure either what to do or how to create a good presentation. So I'm really happy you joined in today, and we will be looking at a couple of the slides of what is a good or hi Jamie, what are going to be like your bad slides. And the other part, before I get started with the presentation, if you guys have other questions, I really don't mind stopping and answering questions. I don't know, like for me, I teach 9th and 10th grade online for Graduation Alliance in the American Academy, but I've also helped create all of the curriculum for all 4 Englishes, so I can answer any questions if you're not here for English 9 or English 10. And I will have moments where we pause and you can ask those questions, just so that you're aware that you can get whatever you need help with today from a live person as well. Okay, so I want to start with, I think, especially with this assignment, because the primary assignment we're looking at is, I think it's 5.5.2 in semester 2 of English 9. However, in English 10, 11, and 12, there are presentations that you have to create. And so this information will help you all the way across all 4 levels of English that we offer. And so it'll be really important to kind of pay attention to this. But what happens in our presentations is we tend to have our essays, and then you take the same information, especially with this one. You write an essay in Unit 4 for semester 2 in English 9 and about an influential person, and then you're supposed to take that research and that information and create a presentation. And what we have a lot of students doing is just copying and pasting their essay in, and then maybe slapping a couple pictures in and saying, all done. And that doesn't create a good presentation. Presentations are a different kind of communication. And I really want you to get in the headspace or the thinking that you're sitting in the audience having to watch your presentation, and you want it to be as interesting as possible for your audience when you're telling about your most influential person, or an organization, which is the one for English 10. And then I believe there's one about like kind of where you want to go in your goals. There's other ones in, I'm trying to remember English 11's topic, but I know that they have one, and I can look at it if we need to, if you have questions about that one. Okay, so to start with, let's look at a couple bad slides. So could Jamie or Shirley, you can either like chime in if you don't mind talking over the meeting space, or you can also text a chat to the group. But what would you think? I'm going to at least tell you heads up, this is not a great essay or a great slide. Could you tell me why you think this might not be such a great slide on the chats? If you were going to read this, how hard would it be to read sitting in the audience?
See, for me, it would be extremely hard because I have dyslexia. So,
So,
reading all of that would be extremely hard for me.
and I think, and Jamie, or excuse me, that was Shirley. Shirley, thank you. I agree. Without even, I read very fast, and if someone was going to start talking about this in a presentation, I would have a hard time trying to get all of that read before they probably moved on to the slide, right? And so that is a really hard to do. And I know that on the other end, teachers are reading your slides, but actually starting in English 10, they require you to give the presentation and turn it in. You can do it as a screen share and just have your voice over it like I'm doing right now, where you just create this, there's an app that's literally, I think it's called Screencast-O-Matic, and you can just talk into your device that you're using and then give your presentation and click through your slides. So you don't have to be on camera, but you're still speaking. And this would be really hard because the speaker either has to read this word for word, which you might as well watch and read an essay instead of watch the presentation if that's the case, or your audience is going to miss a ton of important information. So thank you so much for that answer, because you're spot on. It is way too much information per slide. So then if we go to this next slide, what is wrong with this one? This actually has an image, so it slows us down a little bit. And then we have very little information. But if you're sitting in a room watching this, or even just looking at this makes my eyes hurt. So what do you think? Good job. Yes, Jamie, perfect. The colors are too bright and they're too close together. It might be easier if the text was black maybe, or like a blue, but it'd still be pretty difficult because that green is blaring. It's hard to look directly at the screen. So students like to do this thinking that they're making an effort to make it look good, and that is much appreciated, but it doesn't make a good presentation. But we also don't want to just go black and white either. So then here's my third example of possible things to avoid. We have, hi Aaliyah. So just to get Aaliyah caught up, we've just started, so welcome. We're looking at presentation slides right now that are not a good option to do. The slide that you're currently seeing is the reason this is not so good. There's a good amount of information on it. It's not too much, but it's really bright to look at. And then the text to the background is really difficult to kind of see the difference in. And then here's the third one. And this is probably something I see more often than the last slide, which students are asked to add images, and they're supposed to have at least one image maybe per slide, but they just throw one really big slide into the mix. This is really overwhelming, and I think it kind of looks a little disorganized. So it's much better to have one or two really strong images just to kind of start there, than having filled in the space with a ton of different little images. So I want to stop there and see, I'm hoping you don't have questions yet, but if you do, I would like to stop if you want to talk about a different assignment for a second, or if you do have questions or comments, if I can answer them before we get into the PowerPoint that I'm going to show you today.
Oops. I have a comment, actually.
Go ahead, Shirley.
While the pictures are nice,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really explaining to anybody what they're buying. While you're saying buy suits, you're not really explaining more than buy suits.
Right. Good job. So the words are saying exactly what the images are just showing suits. It's not maybe showing like a diagram on how to measure your suit correctly and those things. And that's a really, really great point. You want your images to do something. And sometimes charts are even better than like a picture. It just kind of depends on your topic. So that's a really great point that to make, and we're going to talk about images and graphics in the PowerPoint. Aaliyah, that's good that you're, thank you for letting me know that your microphone doesn't work. You're more than welcome also just to type in the chat. I have my chat open, so I'll see it as soon as you message me. So thank you. Okay, so let's move into the PowerPoint. I will tell you that I have, I actually teach in the classroom. Oops, hold on, sorry about that. I teach in the classroom, in the like physical classroom as well as work online. And I was thinking about making you guys a fresh PowerPoint, but this is one of the best PowerPoints I've ever seen, not just about how to create good PowerPoint presentations. Though I will talk a lot about Google Slides because that's how I make my PowerPoints now, because I very much like Google and how it just follows me everywhere. So, but I will talk about how to do some of these. But I will tell you, this is made by Damon Nofar, and he's actually a professional. He helps people and trains them on how to give good presentations. So I felt that was it's much better to hear from a professional than a teacher, even though sometimes teachers are kind of professional presenters. So, Kaylee, I need you, sorry, just a second. I need the door shut, please. Sorry, my daughter came out of her room with her music on, so I didn't know if you could hear that, but let's get started. So we're only going to be doing 8 of them. This is a longer slideshow, but they're mostly just like, here's the example of what not to do, here's an example of what to do. There's not a ton on each slide, and I'm going to go through this rather quickly. I'd like to get it done in about 10 minutes, just so that we have plenty of time to go over the actual lesson itself, because I think that's where a lot of students get kind of hung up, is how to do the PowerPoint or the presentation. So, welcome, Candace. So, what we're doing, Candace, just to kind of catch you up, is we're learning about how to create PowerPoint presentations. They do not just need to be in the PowerPoint itself. You can also use Google Slides, but they still, the same ideas match up whether or not you're using PowerPoint or slides. So the first one and if you want to take notes, there are 8 of them. They're numbered. There will be, just like this is, there will be a like a separation, which is a very good presentation practice. Is I actually create slides that look similar for each section that I do. So if I was going to be teaching nouns and verbs on a PowerPoint, I would have my noun slides look very similar to each other, and then my verb slides might be different. Or if I was talking about a novel, maybe all of my characters would have a different color on the background. And then you have like a divider slide between all of your sections. So that's one thing that is a really good idea, that you want to organize your presentation using sections and using the images and the colors you choose to help your audience know that you've got different sections going on. Okay, so number 1, I would avoid normality. I think that this is probably the big one, because a lot of students just like to click on the templates. And though the templates are okay if you need to use them, if you can to create highly engaging ones, you can make your own. And I do that a lot. I'll create like 2 or 3 slides that I like with the colors and where I'm going to put my text. And then I just duplicate the slide. And I will open up slide here in a minute. I'm going to make notes every time I tell you how to do something. I'm going to make note of it, and I will demonstrate it in Google Docs, or excuse me, in Google Slides for you guys. So what I mean by avoid normality is that you don't want to just use the typical like black and white. You want to use formatting that's a little bit more interesting. So you're going to want to do something like this, where this is not what you want to do, excuse me. You're going to want to avoid things where it's just title, 4 bullets. Not all the time. Sometimes that is the best way to do it, but if your entire slide looks exactly, or slideshow looks exactly like this, it gets a little bit boring. From there, so you want to avoid the templates and you want to create your own design. And the way to do this is, you don't have to be difficult. Or go difficult. This is just one really big text box. And like, if I was going to use this and then I'd put my information, I'm hoping you can see my mouse. but I would put my information up here, or maybe take your design and make the text go up and down over here and then have all your information over on the middle. So you want to design your own, and you can take your text box and twirl it. I'll show you how to twirl text boxes if you need to. Try different combinations of colors, sizes, and fonts. So just play with it. It doesn't mean every slide. I just want you to be aware, it does not mean every slide needs to be different. Like I said, I create 2 to 4 slides at the most, and then I just duplicate and use them, because you do want consistency so your audience isn't going every which way. So 1, avoid normalcy and create some of your own slides. But then the other note I would make is that you're going to want to just create a couple of your own and duplicate them and use the ones you need for each section. Make sure you are creative, make it interesting. Maybe if you're going to be presenting on an organization, you know what their organizational colors are. If you were doing like a Coke presentation, like Coca-Cola, stick to red and white so it's interesting. Maybe try to find the Coca-Cola font. There's different ways to play and be creative. So number 2 is colors. Colors are nice, but they can get you in trouble if you use too crazy of colors. Notice this is all black, but we have a lot of white with just a certain word lit up in color. So you can play with your colors in different ways. Find what you like. And so what I do is I've actually started doing this because of this presentation. When I find colors I like in the custom little custom color options, you actually can remember the numbers and find them regularly to use them in all of your PowerPoints if you like that. But the big thing, and this is what I would write down if I was a student at like in high school and completing high school work, is contrast. The contrast is bigger than like having this fancy color scheme. This is a red background, but they only use black and white lettering, and it creates strong contrast. So that is an important part. And that's what was wrong with that very first slide that had the color issues, is it wasn't strong enough of a contrast. So the next one is to use good fonts. You want them to be easily read. Using like curly cues and fancy fonts, some of them are okay. Like the word good here, it's a really clean script, but when they get really scribbly or really super fancy and lots of hearts or curly cues or polka dots and different things in them, it can get difficult. So number 3 is to use good fonts. My name is Times New Roman, and I am not original. This is obviously the font that's a lot of default fonts. Google's default font, meaning it's the one they automatically open in. I believe it's Arial, but it actually might be a different one. We'll look but you want to try to use, you don't have to go crazy, but you want to try to use some that are just slightly different. So then here's one. This is Comic Sans, and it seems more casual and laid back, but it can make it so that your tone that you present is not as serious. But if you were giving a fun presentation, this would be a very appropriate font. So pick your fonts that are appropriate. Helvetica is probably one of my favorite presentation ones because of how it looks bold, which are the A and the big ones down here. But then when you type it, like just put information, it's spread out enough and it's clean and easy to read. And so Helvetica, if you're taking notes, would be a great starting point to play with fonts. I can make the iPhone iOS 7 look fresh and clean. That is how Helvetica knew. I think I'm saying that right. But you can play with your kinds of fonts. So this is still a Helvetica in the family of Helvetica, but it's just slightly different. No, it's not fancy. It's just a lot more engaging to the eye than the normal font that we see all the time, which is that Times Roman or the like the Arial. or make you as fly as these guys. This is Helvetica Black, and if you're old like I am, Run DMC was very popular. I'm not sure if you would know who they are. You might. I'm hoping you do, because they had good music or have good music. But that, and notice they've got contrast up here with the red. This is just adding a weighted line, and I can show you how to play with your lines if you need to as well. Okay. So that is number 3. So we've gone through 1, which is try to create your own templates if you can. I get sometimes we're in a hurry, but pick ones that aren't always used. Number 2, use color, especially contrast. And number 3, play, but not too crazy, play with your fonts. And I would play with them by not just using them the way they are, but enlarging them and bolding them and italicizing them to see what looks good, because you're just trying to grab your audience's eye. And then this is where it's saying text, 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 text is evil. I had a history teacher who, when I was in high school, we used to have these overheads, and he'd write out these long pages of notes. And I actually recently was in his classroom, because he's still teaching, and instead of these really long handwritten notes, now there's just these texts or these slides that have paragraphs and paragraphs of notes on every single slide. And that is very difficult and overwhelming if you're sitting in the audience. So this, I'm sure, is something you've seen 100 different times in a teacher's presentation. And I will tell you, I was guilty of this until I found, and I try to avoid this as much as humanly possible, because I want to engage my students and I want them to be excited about what they're seeing. I think we as humans want to cram as much information on there, thinking we don't want all these extra slides. But there's a lot less work than you would think in creating mini slides and just having smaller pieces of information. So say you have 4 pieces of information in a paragraph. The better thing to do is to spread that out over 4 slides rather than cram them all into one slide, like this. Imagine if there were 4 bullets. Instead, do something simple like 1 at a time. Maybe do 1 at a time, and between each piece of information, an image that would work to demonstrate what you're talking about or represents what you were talking about. It allows your audience to listen to you. What this does by making your information spread out is it allows them to focus on what you're saying, both actually speaking like I am out loud and to your audience, but also to have the time to more easily read each slide and the important information that is on the slide. So do not use the slide as a manuscript. I think a better word for you guys would be do not use it as an essay. It's not just a color and picturized essay. You don't want all this writing that's on the left-hand box. You want it to look good, because if it looks good, your audience is paying attention to it and they're seeing it more. And remember, a presentation is different than reading an essay, and you want it to look like a presentation. And then break it up. And I already kind of said this. Instead of writing 4 pieces of information on one page, break it up into 4 different slides. If you have 2 pieces of information, you've got 2 slides. If you think you need the information together, try not to do more than 2. And what I do when I have 2 pieces of information, but they go together, they're partnered, I'll like do the split image where you can do text on the left side and on the right side so that it is still visually separated, but we're seeing it all together on the same slide. Okay, I'm going to pause there. That's 4. We have 5, 6, 7, and 8 really quick to do. Those were the big ones. Those are like the meaty ones that have to do with the basic parts of presentation. So do you have any questions? Okay. So let's finish. Images are one that I actually find students forgetting to do. And images, we've seen, you know, images say way more. You hear that whole adage or that saying where an image speaks 1,000 words kind of concept. Images are really powerful. They do something to us as humans, and it makes things either make sense more, it's more emotionally engaging. We like just pay attention to those pictures a lot of times, as long as they're meaningful and have to do with the topic and are explaining something. So directions, like I was reading the directions on a piece of furniture I purchased, and they've stopped using words in them because images are easier to follow for almost most people generally. So what we want to do on them is they catch people's eyes, right? And I love this slide because the image is the focus, and you could put just a small text box in a corner, or maybe draw a square right here and write your text if you were going to use an image like this. But when it draws our eyes, our brain is engaged and we're listening more intently generally. It makes a very powerful message. I've had so many students in the organization presentation and essay that they have to present on an organization that they've researched, and a lot of them are choosing like animal shelters and places like that, and images, well chosen images can be really powerful. And so making sure to use them and let them be either a focus or a complement to your text. So use your pictures. I like to do this where I use the pictures, but one thing I do want to note and make the message more powerful, your words are not over the lion and the cat, right? If we put the words over the image, it's very confusing to our eyes, and we're missing the human impact or the emotional impact that this image has and the reason you picked it. So make sure that when you do choose pictures, that you have a space to put your text if you're going to add them to it. And then big is beautiful. The 6, 7, and 8 should go pretty quickly. So I love this because it's one thing I wasn't doing. I tend to make things smaller, or at least I used to. And now I'm not afraid to make items big. And so I can choose to make people focus on what I want them to focus on. So think big. This here, and I can see if I can demonstrate it for you, big with a reflection. This is word art. So you've got a tiny itty bitty box with the huge text box that says big, but then it's reflecting itself. It's really simple to do, but it has a huge impact on your audience. Think bold, think bam. So you want to have that big impact on your reader. And you wouldn't do this every slide, because if you did this every slide, they'd get bored. But if you threw it in on your most important slide or two, it'd really draw their attention to the main points you're trying to make. So view every slide as an advertisement. So if you go and are looking through a magazine at some point in the next week, or looking at an ad when you're skimming through like Google or searching something online, when you see the ads, they're simplified. If you look at, excuse me, sorry about that, this image of Nike, they have an image of their shoes, they've got bam, they have their message, and then underneath in small font is their like more detailed message. Okay, so you kind of want to think about things as an advertisement, because you want whatever you're doing to catch your audience's attention. So, and that's where Aaliyah, if you guys see in the chat, I agree, Aaliyah. I used to do small, and in your essay you should do small because you're trying to fit it onto pages. But when you're talking PowerPoints, I agree. You need to be using much bigger fonts. I would avoid 14. Even that should catch the audience. That is probably a 24 font at least. So you want to use that big, huge font in your presentations. It is different when you're doing your essays and you're writing in MLA format, because there's a certain expectation, but I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about on using the size 14, but I know a lot of other teachers who would recommend a size 14 for PowerPoint, and I think it should be bigger because we're asking you to spread it out and make it more engaging. Size 14 font, 12 font in a PowerPoint, or a presentation of any kind is way too small. You want to be like, if you've ever given a speech and someone has said you need to talk to the back of the room, you need to create slides that talk, and I'm putting quotation marks around that word talk to the back of the room, meaning they're visually easy to see and engaging all the way to the back of the room. So you want to make them big. So I 100% agree with that, Aaliyah. Okay, so, and wow them. I think this is super cute. It's funny. It's going to get a laugh. But notice where the text is. It's big. The image is great and engaging, but then you're right there with the text. And you can see what the text is. It's easy to read. It's not over the baby's face and all of that. So, but you have the big wow to bring attention to what you're trying to focus on with the picture even. They work together well. And I can show you how to do, I've been writing these notes down, an image with text over it. Okay, so number 7, infographics are great. Info is information, graphic is an image. So we're talking about like pie charts or like your little images that represent certain numbers of people. So how you should present the information is, say you're giving numbers. Most of the time infographics have to do with like numbers. If out of 100 people, if 65 of them prefer pie over cake, we want to represent that with an image instead of just having to use the numbers. Our brains process a lot of times, they will process a picture much better than just a random list of numbers. So you want to use infographics to do that information. And we can do it several ways. This one is not necessarily a picture, but it still gets the point. 50% will Google infographics after seeing this, because, and they're just using this as an example from the slide, but how much attention is drawn to that 50%, right? So using that big in order to demonstrate your graphic, but here's that picture. 1 out of 10 people will copy this presentation, and I am probably one of those 1 out of 10 people who see this. I love this presentation, though I do give the credit to where credit's due. The guy is great with how he did this. So, and then you can use this. Pie charts are okay. I'm not going to tell you not to use them, but that's a lot of information in one picture. So the bigger one is maybe to pull out like one piece of this to look at rather than all of them. There's different ways to use the pie chart. So using this one on the left is way more engaging, which you could do if this was out of 100, maybe you could reduce it down to 10, because like 2.5 people preferred Firefox, right? You could use it using your numbers. If it's out of 100, you can divide it by 10 and get those different kind of numbers in there. But I do recommend the pie chart if you're just starting to use things over no infographic. But I would definitely use, if you can find a more simplified way, then I would avoid this much information on a pie chart. All right, and finally, get inspired. You can't wait for inspiration to you have to go after it with a club. Looking for places, you've got SlideShare, design blogs. So go in, when I'm looking for, just to go over that get inspired part, when I'm looking for new ideas on PowerPoints, I actually go and look at what some other people have done, and then I personalize them. I don't copy it, I just kind of remake it in my own way. So here's my thank you. And again, I do want to give tons of credit. I'm going to go all the way back to the very beginning, because I do believe it's important that I don't regularly use a presentation by someone else. But this is made, if you can remember from the beginning, by Damon Nofar. He's actually a professional presenter, and so I thought that was an appropriate use of the slide. So do you have any questions for me? Yes, the monkey is adorable. I love the end of that slide, and I think it's a fun way to end your slides, is to have a funny or a picture of yourself sometimes, maybe a a candid picture of yourself rather than like a nice selfie or headshot. I think having humor at the end, because what happens at the very end is we generally hear this question: do you have any questions for me? And as a presenter, it sucks not having someone ask questions. You worry if you didn't get your point across. But as an audience member, it can be intimidating. But if you've got that monkey at the end or something fun, maybe you doing something fun, you're going to end up getting people more engaged and willing to talk to you. So here are the other things I should probably show you. Here's his information. But the other part is that here are all of the, this is the works cited slides for the pictures that he used. So before we move into, I'll demonstrate a couple things. I do want to go into the lesson before I demonstrate the things in Google Slide. I'm just going to open Slide or PowerPoint, whichever one you guys want the most. Maybe both, because they're kind of work the same no matter what. You just have to figure out where they're located between PowerPoint and Slide. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do some of the things I talked about, but I do want to go over the requirements for the lesson itself before I do that. So let's see here. Anybody have any questions for me before I get started with the next one? And please, it can be anything. If you're needing help on a different assignment, I'm more than happy to help you with that too, especially if you're waiting around for that help.
I've actually been having problems with two, I want to say they're multiple choice for 1.8.1, and then the lesson for the character development.
Are you in English 9 or 10?
I'm in English 10.
12? English 10. Okay, give me a second to pull up my my grade book, okay, or my my Buzz. Did I actually? No, it's right there. English 10, and switch over to English 10. Can you see my screen that's showing Buzz?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is a teacher platform, but you're no longer seeing my presentation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's in 10 semester 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go in here. So 10 semester 1, and it has to be 1.1.8. That's the first one. Let's see. Comparing and contrasting.
Yeah.
So is it the multiple choice you're having a problem with?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see what's the story. What are you comparing and contrasting in the lesson?
The monkey's paw.
Uh-huh. So are you the way I have to open that, I'm going to have to take you off of screen share really quick because it'll have the answer keys. So
Okay.
give me just a second to pull that off. I don't have a whiteboard. So I'm going to just slide you over to this and it just shows you one of my tabs, okay? While I look, can you see the PowerPoint again?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me if that switches over. Did it switch over at all?
Yeah, I see the monkey.
Awesome, that's what I needed to know. Thank you. I'm not trying to, I just don't want to open an answer key in front of you. I don't think that's really good teaching.
No, fine.
So I'm actually going to get into yours as well if I can find it. So sure. Do you want to type in the chat your last name for me? I just see Shirley. I think that's who's talking to me still, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can actually look you up that way on where I'm looking. So if you don't mind, if you want to, you can actually just chat to me and I'll see your last name. Okay. Thank you. So well, you're not on here. Huh. Okay, let me open one. So I'm not showing any attempts by you. So have you just not started it or turned it in? Shirley, are you there?
Yeah, I've done it several times.
And it's under the last name you gave me, right?
Yep.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, let me go to my grade book real quick and look. You're still seeing the monkey, correct?
Yep. I can.
Okay,
I mean, I can pull up on my tablet. I can pull up the score that I got for turning them in.
Yeah, no, I was gonna try to find the ones you're having in a difficult time with. I'm just gonna look you up a different way real quick, so that I can find it right. So the monkey's paw. The story is, huh? Do you know you're not in my grade? Okay, that's why you're not in my grade book. I can still help you with it anyway. Who's your teacher for 10? It's not Malone, is it?
No.
That's why, and that's okay. I just making sure that I was gonna pull yours up, but I'll just pull up the activity by itself. So we can just go into any of these. Let's do this one. Okay. So difference and similarities. How is that compare? Okay, so it's technically not doing a compare contrast in the questions that I can see.
And that's where I got confused.
So match the items. Oh, good. We keep. So the way I'm looking at this, because we see it a little bit differently, I think, for you, but is so like in one of the questions, it literally says match the items, and so you're comparing it. Never mind. I remember this now. I don't see these. These auto correct for me, so I don't actually see student responses to these. So I apologize that I had to get used to it. But so what you're going to do is you need to read the story and then you're going to compare it to the video. So like what you're doing is, does the story begin with the whites playing chess in the text or the video or both? Does that make sense? And so like the story begins with the whites playing chess actually happens with the text. It begins with a flashback in the video. So like the way you would have answered that is that the story begins with the whites playing chess. That's difference, meaning the video is different because the text is what begins with the whites playing chess.
Okay.
If it does both of them, it was a stormy night when Major Morris arrived at the whites' home. That's the similarity because it's stormy, right?
Okay.
And then the story begins with the flashback. So the choices actually say text or video. So instead of thinking difference and similarity, just go ahead and go in there and go, okay, which one is text and which one is video?
Okay.
And I think you'll be okay. And then the similarities that happens in both. So it'd be similar. Okay. I think that'll actually probably be more helpful to you than thinking this is how it's different, because I see where it's worded interesting. Like if you're just matching them, that's got to be difficult to do. But I think if you're looking at it more like text and video, those are in parentheses for your choices, then use that and say, okay, this happened in the story, that happened in the video, and this happened in both. And that's how I would separate them out. Okay? Okay, and then what was the other one, Shirley, that you said you had questions of? It wasn't just that one. There was another.
The lesson is 2.3 character development.
Okay, let me get in there. And which character are you looking at? You remember? Is it talking about, let me look at the activity.
I think it was another multiple.
Yeah, it's another multiple choice. Is it, I just need to open one and I'll be there in just a second. So I know people keep kind of coming in and out, but how might the character development show a theme? Okay, so it's actually asking how character development is impacting the story, right? So it's not really asking, not a specific story. It's trying to see if you understand character development. So The big ones are this, and I'll kind of go over a couple big things if you can either jot them down or just kind of remember this. And there will be a link for this video you can go back to when you go back in to do the lesson. But you want to think about the protagonist as just the main character. And the protagonist does not have to be good or bad. It's just what the main character is in the story. And then the antagonist is the thing that acts against the protagonist. And again, they don't have to be good or bad. Like you could have a story between a mother and then her child, and neither are really good or bad, but there's a problem that needs to be solved, or maybe they need to resolve an issue or something like that. And so the mother's saying no to the daughter that she can't go out at night because of whatever reason, and the daughter's trying to push the boundaries. And I'm making up a story, but then they have to figure out how to resolve that together. So that's showing where you don't have like a good or a bad character. A lot of times, especially in our big stories, just take like The Lion King. You have Simba as the protagonist. He's the main character, and he's a good character. Like he's good, like as in good versus evil. And Scar's pretty dark, right? And kind of evil. And so that's an easy way to see protagonist and antagonist, but that's not always true, especially for the more realistic stories. So you want to think about antagonist as that character that is making the protagonist change somehow. And it could even be nature. So like there's a story called To Build a Fire by Jack London that I teach, and it's about a guy who goes out in the Yukon and he doesn't listen to the old timers, and he goes up against like negative 70-degree temperatures, and he dies because he doesn't pay attention to nature or the old timers telling him what to do, because he thinks he's better than them. And he knows better. And that character, the antagonist in that story, is nature. So it's because that's what's causing the change and going up against the protagonist. Okay. And so then you'll have your supporting characters, and it's pretty much anybody that's not a protagonist or an antagonist. So that's pretty much, and it can be anybody. And a lot of supporting characters are flat. That means we just know them on one level. So they're just kind of like one-sided piece of paper. Versus if we sculpted someone and we could walk around them and look at them, those are our round characters, and they tend to be protagonists. Because we know a lot more about them. And stories can have sometimes more protagonists or more antagonists than just one. Like you look at the Harry Potter series and they have a lot of protagonists. They're really important, even though Harry you would consider like the primary protagonist. We know enough about Ron, and they go through change too, that he kind of becomes a protagonist too. And so you just kind of have to look at, is it the main character? Are they the primary character, and are they round, and do they go through change? And that would be a protagonist. But simple definition is main character. I probably overcomplicated that, but I think sometimes you need more information when you're looking at the harder questions than just main character. So those are the three big ones that you have to match. And then looking at this, so Simba has to learn in The Lion King, he has to learn the importance of family and the importance of like following rules, kind of, right? That's like the big lesson to be learned. And so because of their path or their needs to learn something, what they need to learn tends to be one of the big themes. So the thing that they're experiencing and the way they grow or change oftentimes has to do with theme. So To Kill a Mockingbird is about a young girl who's trying to understand the horrible racism in the South during the like 1930s and 40s during segregation. And she doesn't understand it because her family does not. She's a white girl, but she doesn't understand it because her family's never was not racist, and her father won't let her be. Essentially, and so her story is a growing up story around racist issues. And so that, again, her character, she's the protagonist, her name's Scout, would be learning about this main thing, which is racism and how wrong it is. So that's how the experiences of our protagonist generally help develop a theme. Okay.
Okay.
Is that, I know that's a kind of big, but that would be one. And then a question you might ask yourself is, oh, so the way you kind of figure that out, and it's actually on your activity a little in a way, is you ask, what is the main character trying to learn? What lesson are they trying to learn about life? Right? And if you can answer that, you generally can get to your theme to help simplify that. Okay, so when you're looking at a main character and they ask you how can main characters or protagonists develop a theme, your answer is whatever lesson they're trying to learn about life or about a situation. I hope that helped.
No, yeah, it did.
Okay, so do you have any more questions about that?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right, let's see here. We're almost out of time. So who, I know I've had a couple people leave and come back. So Jamie, do you have any different questions? I'm going to pop back my screen share while we're doing that. I'm going to get back into the activity that I wanted to show you. So Shirley, you're in 10. Jamie, could you text which English you're in for me so I can kind of go in and show you, explain your presentations as well? Or chat the mess English 11. Oh boy. Okay, I have to think about that. English 11 is the historical. There's a lot of historical writing in there. So I might have to look at something on my, have you come across a presentation yet, Jamie? So I'm gonna screen share really quick. Okay, some essays. Okay, so and the thing is we try to do them so they're, instead of having you research a whole brand new topic, I'm pretty sure because the same two people, Maria and I both did the lessons, and I'm trying to remember the exact topic because I don't teach English 11. It's been several months since we built the lesson, but every single one of them has a presentation, and we really do try to create the presentation from an essay topic, because you have to do this research or do all this thinking about the essay topics, and we're really going to want to talk about those things. And so what you'll want to do, and I only have 4 minutes because we have a new session coming, so I have to hurry, but what we'll do is you'll write a topic. So in English 9, it is someone you admire and you research them and then you write a paper about them. And that's like in section 4. In English 10, it was, it's about an organization. And I swear in English 11, it'll probably be at the end of either quarter, like the first half of semester 2 or the second half of semester 2. You create a presentation, and it's going to drive me crazy not knowing what it is, but it will be off of something you've already written or researched, Jamie, okay? So you take all that information and you want to put it into a presentation, which in 9, it just says create a presentation and you actually don't have to present it. But in 10, 11, and 12, you actually have to give the presentation, at least as long as they kept everything the way it was. And so you'll want to practice the presentation before you videotape it. Write notes. It's amazing how many people don't use the notes part in their presentation, like their slides or their PowerPoint. Write the notes down so that you don't get off topic and you cover what you want. Remember to make it look visually appealing and engaging. Don't just copy and paste your essay in. And I know it's really easy to do that because you have this awesome essay in front of you and that's where you have to take the information. But just, you can copy the highlighted and really important pieces that you can talk about in your presentation, but you don't want to like copy an entire paragraph and put it into your presentation. So, and it requires images and it requires you to show your sources. So do you understand the format? You go from essay, you research, you write your essay, and then from that essay, you pull the most important pieces and turn it into your presentation following the examples we kind of showed today. I'm hoping that helped. We're kind of out of time. Thank you, Jamie, for letting me know that it helped or that you understood that. So, and I'm sorry, Jamie, that I can't remember the exact topic, but we followed the same format so there was consistency. So you got used to the pattern and could do a better job every time as you went through the program. So I hope that helped. I do have to sign out because there's someone coming back in for a different session like in 1 minute. I think that's why people keep coming in and out. They're looking for another teacher. But thank you for joining me. And you can email me. I'm going to type this here really quick. Angelina Vallone at Graduation Alliance. Even if I am not your teacher, I am very willing to, oops, I didn't mean to type that to copy. Why didn't it go to, So I'm gonna go to everybody, there we go. All right, so there is my email if you need to grab it. I'm very, very happy to help you guys with anything you need, even if you're not in my classroom. It's kind of nice for someone who's helped write the lessons. I know what that we're looking for. So please email me, grab that email, save it somewhere. Even if it's in a year or in another 2 months and you need help in a whole different English class, please keep my email and let me know if you need some help, especially if you need some help creating your presentation, okay? Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great night and good day and a good weekend and finish off a relaxing Sunday.